welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to help trauma therapists be their incredible selves, to be human, to be real, not just a clinician. I'm a big believer in who we are is more important than what we know, and this requires cultivating authenticity, genuineness, and vulnerability, and that requires intention. You can learn more about my courses and workshops by going to thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. Let's get started. All right, folks, really excited to bring back today Jennifer Kindera. I interviewed her several months ago, but wanted to bring her back. She's doing a lot of really positive things in this field, and you can learn more about her by going to jenniferkindera.com. All right, here we go. All right, so 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, guys, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. Guy McPherson here. Very excited to have as my guest today, Jennifer Kindera. Jennifer, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Guy. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. So Jennifer is I just lost my notes here. Sorry. Jennifer's a complex trauma survivor who's been traveling the path of recovery for over 25 years. As a certified advanced trauma recovery coach, she works one-on-one and in group settings with survivors of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Offering an honest, inclusive, and compassionate space for the unfolding of her client's life journey, Jennifer focuses on some of the byproducts of trauma: shame, codependency, and addiction. Jennifer's writings can be found on Medium, most often curated under the mental health category, and she also serves as the director of innovative client solutions and is a mentor to current students oh boy, I'm gonna have to redo this, Jennifer.
No worries.
I missed that. You're at the International
Association of Trauma Recovery Coaching.
All right, hang on. Oh boy, that's okay. We're recording this. I can do that. I think what happened is I copy and pasted that.
I wasn't sure when I put it together how long it was supposed to be or how detailed.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I usually just International Association of Trauma Recovery Coaching. Okay, I'm gonna redo this. International Association of Trauma
Recovery Coaching. Yep.
Coaching. Okay.
Right. I hear a pup.
Oh, that's outside.
Oh.
Yeah, that's outside. All right. Next. Okay, I'm gonna redo this. Okay. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, guys, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. Guy McPherson here. Super excited to have as my guest today, Jennifer Kindera. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you so much, Guy, for having me.
All right. So Jennifer is a complex trauma survivor who's been traveling the path of recovery for over 25 years. As a certified advanced trauma recovery coach, Jennifer works one-on-one and in group settings with survivors of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, offering an honest, inclusive, and compassionate space for the unfolding of her client's life journey. She focuses on some of the byproducts of trauma: shame, codependency, and addiction. Jennifer's writings can be found on Medium. That's medium.com, most often curated under the mental health category. And she also serves as a director of innovative client solutions and is a mentor to current students at the International Association of Trauma Recovery Coaching. Yes, got it. All right, Jennifer, welcome. Thanks so much for being here and doing this.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Awesome. So let's get started here. Well, actually, before we do, share with our listeners where you're from originally and where you're calling from, and then we'll dive in.
Okay. I grew up in the Midwest, was a Wisconsin and Minnesota girl for a long, long time. And then a few years ago, moved down to Texas. So now I live in the Texas heat, Houston to be specific.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep. And so it was, there's 2 million people in the state of Minnesota. There's 6 million people in the city of Houston. So it was a big difference. That and the weather is just a huge change for me.
Wow. All right. So, as I said before we started recording here, my goal really is to talk about, I came across you and I was like, this woman is passionate about what she's doing. That's what this podcast is about. So, and what I want to do is focus. How the heck did you get here? That's what it is. The journey of you. Share with our listeners that story.
Oh, wow. How did I get here? Well, and I'm going to turn 50 this year. So, it's been 50 years getting to this point. You know, my childhood and growing up years, I was raised with a mentally ill mom, and she escalated as time went on. And so when I was a child in the setting of narcissism, and there was physical abuse and sexual abuse and emotional warfare a lot. And, not that I don't have some positive memories, because nothing is ever all bad or all good, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was really tumultuous for a long time. And so I remember having my first thoughts of suicide when I was about 6 years old, laying in the snow outside, looking up at the sky. Yeah, asking my dad, what happens if you go to sleep when it's this cold? And him telling me, well, you would die. And I thought about it, and that was, I didn't know that other people didn't feel that way. I didn't know that the way I was being raised was dysfunctional. We didn't have those terms back then, and we didn't talk about it. Nobody talked about it. When I was 12, they shipped off my brother, who was my sexual abuser, to military school, and all of a sudden it was like the abuse just stopped and never a word was spoken. And I spent a lot of years hiding from it, running from it, invisible. I felt invisible. The trauma had created such a distance between my mind and my heart that I didn't even know that that was there, but I didn't know I should feel any differently. Um, when I went away to college, uh, after college, really, and I was out from under my parents' thumb for the first time, and I started to have horrific panic attacks and awful nightmares. I mean, like violent, awful nightmares every night. And I ended up, I mean, what a gift. I ended up in the therapist's office and sitting there. And I remember my first therapist vividly, and she
This
had
was
the
in college.
this was right after college.
Oh,
It was
wow.
like
Okay.
the minute I was done and away from my parents completely,
Wow.
this all started to happen. Um, and that was the beginning of it. I did several stints of EMDR. She told me that one of the first sessions that I dissociated more than any other person she'd ever seen. I wasn't connected to myself. And I know now that that's because we self-abandon. We're taught to disconnect from our emotions at a young age when we're subjected to that kind of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And I just completely was off the charts. So that was the beginning of my journey to get to this place. Um, so I don't even know what else to say about that part.
Well, if I may, for a second here, I mean, first of all, this is, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's so intense,
Mhm.
and the fact that you're sharing this is, I mean, I want to thank you for sharing this. A story like this is just, it can be overwhelming. I mean, it can be overwhelming to hear, let alone experience. When you talked about that image of you lying down in the snow is very powerful. And then jump to college, but you were receiving this emotional warfare that was going on, and abuse from your brother. How did you manage?
Guy, I don't know. There was always a part of me, I think, that didn't think that my story could end that way. That I just had to, and because I was raised in that environment, it wasn't ever. It's going to sound weird. It wasn't ever about me. It was always about, wait, what do I have to do to keep the people that are around me from being angry with me and thus
Mm.
being hurt further. And so I remember thinking in my head, well, okay, she said to do it this way. So if I just do it this way today and every day, then she won't be mad and I won't get hurt. And then the next day, because she was mentally ill and narcissistic, the expectations would change. So I would do it the way I thought I was supposed to do it, and then that was wrong. So it was, I mean, when you're in that kind of survival mode, there isn't a thought, and my brain was growing, my brain was developing. I didn't have the thought of how are you surviving this. It was just I had to survive. And so then now I know we go to this level of shame, because shame is that social construct emotion that is going to key to survival. I have to belong to my tribe, my community, my family, because my survival depends on it. So I choose shame over death, essentially.
What unfolded after you started seeing a therapist?
Oh my goodness. I didn't even know there was a name or a disorder for what my mom was. I thought she was perfect when I walked in there. I thought that she was what I was supposed to emulate. Um, and finding out that it wasn't my fault, that I didn't bring this on, that I wasn't going to be able to change this overnight, but that the journey along the way and the glimmers of hope along the way through the pain and unpacking the pain and holding it up to the light were profound. I remember when I got pregnant with my daughter, I have 2 children, and I remember holding her in the hospital and thinking, she is never going to feel the pain that I felt when I was a child. She may have different pain, but she is never going to be physically abused. She is never going to be hurt in those ways.
Man, I can feel that. And that is so crazy.
I am tearing up.
Yeah, it's very powerful. It's very powerful. I mean, so here you are, you're helping others. How did that, how did you
How did I get there?
that role and that passion?
Well, and for a long time, walking this path on my own in therapy, EMDR, reading what I could, learning about what was going on with me, the neuroscience of it, all of it, that was enough. And I worked corporate America. I managed a resort. I had several different, paths on my career, in my professional life. And, in the back of my head, though, it was always, kind of, what do you want to be when you grow up? And when I don't know, a few years ago, um, I connected with a woman who was a trauma recovery coach, and not in a professional capacity, but I submitted a writing piece to an anthology, and they accepted it. And she messaged me after, and we started to talk, and she said, we have this Facebook forum group if you're interested. It's all survivors, blah, blah, blah. And so I joined that, and it was kind of the beginning of this relationship with her. And she was doing one-to-one coaching, and then she decided to open up the International Association of Trauma Recovery Coaching to train others to do what she did. And she messaged me when she had the first class and said, I think you'd be a great fit. And I went, And I didn't sign up for that class. I went in the next session. And it's been quite a journey. I love what I do. And one of the things that I think about all the time is that there was no reason for what happened to me or what happens to others who are put in, those situations as children. There's no reason, but this gives us purpose. This gives us purpose to go out there and be of service and help other people to navigate these waters that are so insane. And the byproducts of what trauma brings us. The trauma came first, and then came the addiction, and then came the shame and the codependency, and actually the addiction's probably after. But and I would say that the big, before that happened, I should intercept or put this in there. The biggest catalyst for me to start to look for something on a deeper level and in terms of service was that my mom took her own life when I was in my 30s, and left me to clean up the mess, and it was a mess. And so that was, At that point, then I veered off my path and started to drink wine and went downhill really fast and ended up in treatment in 2 years. And, it's just, there's been a lot to my story that we can't possibly cover. And,
Right.
But all of those parts and pieces brought me to this place where I have learned. There's always something new to learn. I want to keep on learning, and I want to keep on teaching, and I want to help people to navigate this, because that whole realization of this is not your fault and you matter. You matter enough to heal. You matter enough to take the chance to trust someone. I mean, for a trauma survivor, even trusting one other person, it's like they don't even know where to start.
Right. Right. When you're working with people, you talked about trust and so forth. What are you seeing as some of the challenges that, in addition, I guess, to trust and so forth, that you feel people who suffer trauma are struggling with? You get engaged with a client, you meet a client and so forth. What are you seeing from your experience that oftentimes people are struggling with to take that initial step to get in there?
A lot of times I see a lot of relational issues. They're having trouble with their boss, their boyfriend, their husband, their wife, and they get in because they think, and then they're also having, it can be such a variety of things. They can be having a lot of negative thoughts about themselves and the world at large. They can have, and which is shame. They can be having trouble relationally, and their partner is saying, I think you need help. And them, or they're overcome with waves of emotion and anger that they just don't know how to deal with because they've stuffed it down for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most important things that I talk to clients about is that your psyche, your brain is built to protect you, and it's like a sponge. And what happens when you oversaturate a sponge? The water leaks out the edges, right? So here they are, they're going along in their life, and they've got their house and their white picket fence and their 2.5 kids and their dog, and all of a sudden they're having panic attacks or overwhelming emotions or relational issues. And they're having a lot of thoughts about, when I was a little kid, this is how my parents did this, and I feel really awful when I think about that. And I do a real bottom up approach with this, because we can't heal trauma just in the front of the brain. It doesn't work. If that worked, I wouldn't have clients that say, I was in talk therapy for 15 years and I never felt any better. We talk about where you're feeling this in your body. What are other modalities we can employ to help you navigate this? Yoga. I mean, when I talk about, I'm big in the self-care, self-compassion arena with my clients and with myself. Functional self-care, physical self-care, emotional self-care, internal self-care, relational self-care. How do we employ those things in your life to keep you moving forward? And some days we don't move forward. Some days we just want to sit in bed with the covers over our head, and that's okay. It's this unprecedented validation of where they are at any moment in time. Yeah. So I see a lot of that with people coming in. A lot of I'm having trouble with my daughter. She reminds me of me at that age. I don't want her to go down that path, that kind of thing.
So what are some of the differences between like what you do as a coach and say what's someone else does as a therapist, as a licensed therapist? I'm sure you get that question a lot.
I get that question a lot. I have a whole page devoted to it on my website of FAQs. Basically, there's several differences, but I would say that the gap is I am not a therapist. I do not diagnose anyone. If somebody comes to me and says, well, I want a diagnosis. Do I have depression? Do I have anxiety? I don't do that. I send them to a therapist. The analogy or the metaphor that I like to use with people is, I'm driving in the car. I'm in the passenger seat and the client is in the driver's seat. And we're driving down the road and we're talking, and they turn down a street and it's dark and a dead end. And I say, oh, this is a dead end. Maybe we should go a different direction. And so we pull out and go a different direction. And then we go down another street and it's the street lamps are broken. And I'm like, oh, I have the flashlight right here. Let's navigate this together. We're really, the client is really in charge. I don't set a treatment plan. We set recovery goals together. They are as little as possible. They are as small.
Mm-hmm.
They are the client that says, I have laundry all over my apartment and I can't bring myself to put it in the washing machine. And I say, well, can you pick up all the blue pieces of laundry this week and put them in the laundry basket? You don't even have to put them in the washing machine. You give them that space to really start, and catch up with what they need to catch up with, and that idea that they are supported no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know I have had wonderful experiences in therapy, absolutely, all the way along. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my therapists for the last 30 years.
Right.
But I love coaching because it puts us on a real equal footing.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring my expertise to the table, but what they are the expert on them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this question is a good one. And for me, from what you're saying, I don't think there is a lot of difference from what you're saying from a lot of the therapists I speak with, because a lot of the therapists that I know and speak with have that same passion and idea and feeling that that relationship is very equal, and there shouldn't be this dynamic. But I think there's an assumption when someone goes to see a therapist, a licensed therapist, that there is a power dynamic that there might not be with a coach. Right? Someone who's
Yep.
a coach, there's that feeling that, okay, this person's been through it themselves. And certainly with someone like yourself, they've walked that walk. I think inherently there might be that quicker identification with this person is, they know what I'm feeling and going through. I could see that. And that's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very powerful.
Well, and I am a mental health practitioner, trained to work with clients with the childhood trauma, the complex trauma. But the difference is, as opposed, because other life coaches, they look at the future and moving forward. We do acknowledge the past traumas and then work in the present
Mm-hmm.
for the client, so we work really hard on the safe environment. We don't want them to experience re-traumatization. I use a lot of gentle curiosity. We look at maladaptive coping mechanisms and unhealthy behaviors that are a result of the broken core beliefs that trauma taught. Trauma teaches 4 lies. I am worthless, I am powerless, I am to blame, and I should feel shame. And those become prevalent throughout the life
Mm-hmm.
of the survivor. And the difference in terms of therapy and coaching, maybe like you say, there isn't a lot of difference. I know that I am not a therapist. I do not diagnose. I just work with people on this equal footing, and that relationship is safe for them. And now people may have that in therapy too. I know I did.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of different types of orientations of therapists, so it's hard to generalize, as I'm sure there are with coaches as well. So let me just remind everyone that I'm speaking with Jennifer Kindera. Jennifer, what's your website? How do people get in contact with you?
Oh, it's jenniferkindera.com.
Okay, simple.
Yep.
That's JenniferKindera.
Yep.
All right. So, and who's you work with? What kids, adults, everybody, or what?
I do not work with children under the age of 18. So no. Mostly women, trauma survivors. I've had a couple inquiries for men, but that they haven't proceeded with it. But generally, women over the age of 18.
Okay. There's something, I mean, very powerful about you and your story. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love doing this podcast, because I mean, trauma is, I mean, it's all over the place. It's everywhere. You cannot wake up and turn on, the radio or the news or whatever, Alexa, whatever. And it's so prevalent. And, that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast, as hopefully a wake-up call for people. I was listening to an interview on with Terry Gross the other day, and she had on these two authors of a book on Judge Kavanaugh. You remember the judicial hearings, Judge Kavanaugh?
Yep.
And the authors were explaining what happens when a trauma survivor is trying to remember or recollect what's gone on. And oftentimes, as you well know, not everything is linear. There are often, blank spots and misinterpretations and forgettings. And we know that, but a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that. And that needs to be common knowledge. And I think a lot of what you're talking about here needs to be common knowledge. But anyway, I'm so glad you're on this podcast and getting your voice out there.
Well, and Guy, thank you for what you do, because, I mentioned to the founder of my school that I was doing this, and she said, I remember when he started years ago and how wonderful this is. And so thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. All right. So how about a go-to book recommendation, whether trauma related or not? What do you have for us?
Oh, and you didn't ask me what my quote was, and I had 4.
All right, let's do the book, and then we'll go back to do the
Okay. The best book that I read, well, there's so many. The one I would highly recommend is Pete Walker's From Surviving to Thriving, CPTSD.
Oh my God, that's so funny. I'm reading that right now.
Are you reading it? Isn't it just amazing?
It's very intense. Yeah.
Yes. That and The Body Keeps the Score, of course, and then anything by Brené Brown. I love Brené Brown. I saw her live last year, and I was just, it was amazing. So, but yeah, Pete Walker's book is absolutely, I recommend that every one of my clients read it, because it gives us that baseline understanding of what we're dealing with.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I'll have those listed up here at the show notes page at thetraumatherapistpodcast.com. Your quote. I apologize for missing that.
Oh, no, it's okay. We kind of went down an intense path, didn't we? My quote, and this has come from years and years, is that it's not why me, it's what now.
It's not why me, it's what now. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because, I sat in that place of self-pity for a while, going through some of this throughout therapy. I think we have to deal with those emotions that we've never learned how to deal with, the anger, the pity, the whatever, the shame of it. And yet every time I fell down, I got back up. And those are those rising skills, that resiliency that we work with so much in this field. Yeah.
Wow. Jennifer, you are one inspiring lady. I've got to say that. And again,
thank you.
You're welcome. Your passion is really what I hope this podcast is about. Thanks again for coming on here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
I want to thank you so much for listening to this podcast, and I want to let you know that I am very excited about my new podcast, The Right Now Project. The Right Now Project is about healing. It's about stepping into our own courage and authenticity and getting started or continuing along our healing process. We're all going through something, whatever it is, in this crazy life we're living. And the Right Now Project is about honoring that, celebrating that, and sharing our stories via the associated membership site. Check us out at therightnowproject.com, therightnowproject.com.